But all right, cool. That's gonna, I guess, wrap up our news for this episode. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our final segment, our main segment of the show. And so this is actually a topic that Adnan came up with that I think is just brilliant and we had to cover. But, there's been a new news piece. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but basically Sony is going to release later this month the DLC from The Last of Us Left Behind. They're going to re-release it as a $10 standalone title with all sorts of in-game purchases that expand the game. You can now get multiplayer with the game, so then you can have like a whole thing. I think you could even buy the full Uncharted game. I mean, Last of Us game inside of Left Behind and expand the game. And so that got our gears thinking, and we're thinking, well, what defines downloadable content like a story DLC versus a standalone game? And Adnan brought up another example of the infamous standalone game that came out recently where you played as Fetch, and kind of like her storyline. That could have easily been DLC for the infamous game, but it wasn't. It was a standalone title. And I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of background history on it. I don't know, dude. What's your take on all this? Because you came up with this idea, so I'd be curious what you think about it.
Well, it's hard to define it because, like, most of them are just DLC expansions because The Last of Us one makes no sense in terms of news.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can't play that without playing The Last of Us campaign, because if you do, you've basically spoiled half the game. It's riddled with spoilers.
Yeah.
That's the entire point of it. It's just riddled because it takes at a certain point in the campaign and it jumps side to side. And the same with the infamous one as well, First Light. That's pretty much filled with spoilers for the main infamous campaign. So if you play that, it makes no sense. It's hard to warrant what a standalone game really is. I mean, like, a standalone game and what, like, outside of like a DLC expansion, I was going to take one example would be the Undead Nightmare from Red Dead.
Right.
Like, that could be a standalone game because it pretty much works out. I think it even came out on disc, if I remember correctly. And the other ones were GTA 4, the Ballad of Gay Tony, and the Lost and the Damned.
Yeah,
like, they make sense because. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, they also later on re-released those.
Yeah, they make sense because they are kind of like miniature expansion packs. Like, they're bigger than DLC. Obviously, because Rockstar have a very different formula in developing games and what they actually release as DLC content. But yeah, like, they make sense in how you could do something and people approach it. But standalone games are really, really hard. Do you want to make? It's the same with, like, I was going to put another example. That Batgirl DLC that's in the Arkham Knight season pass, that could also be a standalone, depending on what they do for it. Because I'd actually prefer a standalone game where you play as Batgirl, because I think that might be more interesting. But it's really hard because where is the line between DLC and standalone expansion? Mm-hmm. And you can't really have them overlapping because technically they're always going to show some form of connection. Here's another one that kind of will work as a little bit of a standalone is the Dead Rising 2 DLC. Was it K0? And then Dead Rising 2, the actual game that came out afterwards.
Right, yeah.
Because that kind of led into Dead Rising 2. You didn't necessarily have to play it, but if you played it, it was like kind of a standalone expansion which kind of carried over progress.
Right.
That was a kind of a good example of doing it, where even if you played it after the finishing Dead Rising 2, it wouldn't have spoiled anything.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail in the coffin. For a standalone release, I think the most important thing is that, exactly what you just said, you make sure that the release that you're making is something that is not going to spoil from the overall experience of the main game. Because if you really think about it, standalone games are almost like a commercial for the main game. It's kind of like, here's like a smaller version of, something that you could end up playing in a bigger version, and on top of that, it it also pleases people who have played the main game because it's more content, from the bigger game, just in a smaller portion. So yeah, that is really, I think that's a good point, that whatever you release, you have to make sure that it doesn't take away or deviate from the main title. The Ballad of Gay Tony and The Lost and the Damned, the two excellent DLCs that were released for Grand Theft Auto. I totally agree, man. I know later on they turned them into standalone releases. They could have been released as its own game, and it would have been great, because it crosses over a little bit with GTA 4, but not enough that you know what's happening with that character, Nico, and it spoils his story for it. So yeah, man, I agree. I think that's I mean, me personally, you could argue that Ground Zeroes is a standalone release kind of thing.
Yeah, that definitely is a standalone game, because it works as a standalone.
Exactly.
Granted, it needs more content and everything else. The pricing is a different issue with that, but I mean, that is a very good example of a standalone game, because it makes sense for where the chapter is, and obviously that's like a key part of, obviously, the Phantom Pain. It's also a key part of wedging the gap between Phantom Pain and Peace Walker. So yeah, that makes sense. It's just really weird when companies do it and they release a standalone game, because you really have to think about where you're targeting it and who you're targeting at. Like The Last of Us now being released as a standalone makes no sense, because people who've never played it and then have a PS4 will just buy the remastered collection, the remastered version, which has the DLC.
Right.
That's the funny part, because if you look at it as well, they released Left Behind on PS4, and then already the remastered's on there, which has Left Behind in it. And like, yeah, you kind of like hands up in the air, like,
like
what's going on?
Who's the audience for this exactly? Like,
like who's the idiot that actually decided this is a good idea? More like.
Like, oh, yes, of course, go for it. Like, you're right, who will buy that? That's kind of like, you might as well just get the whole game and save your money and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Makes more sense to save your money for that.
I was really, yeah, dude, I was really kind of beside myself when they announced that. I didn't quite get it. I didn't really, I didn't get what they were trying to do with that. I mean... Yeah, like, I knew I wasn't gonna buy it, because I didn't buy the Last of Us remastered, and I just thought, who is this Kate? Like, who the hell is gonna buy this? Like, who is this for? What's going on? Who am I? Where is my mother? Like, I got really confused by it, and didn't really quite know what thing they're heading. I mean, I guess if I had to try to put like anything to it. I mean, I guess maybe they were just trying to put. I mean, it's a very powerful story, Left Behind. That was a very powerful story.
This conversation is not taking away from the quality. No,
right.
No doubt about that. The quality is very, very good. It just, marketing wise, it makes very little sense of what you can kind of warrant as a standalone game. Because there's other examples that kind of shown that some of those actually can warrant being a standalone game instead of DLC, because they have more content than normal DLCs would have. Like, if, for example, Ground Zero is a standalone game, I can't see them being a DLC chapter, because it's bigger than what's it called? Case Zero. It's bigger than the Dead Rising 2 Case Zero game, and obviously the price is a different issue. But I mean, that is a standalone game. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense for what it's doing. But Left Behind isn't, and then how they're doing it. It's more about what... Oh, I'm trying to dig myself in a little bit of a hole.
I know, I understand what you're saying, dude. Like, Case Zero is a perfect prologue, just as Ground Zeroes was a perfect prologue. The only difference is Case Zero was I mean, I know a lot of people joked Ground Zeroes was a short game, but not really, because the side ops and collecting all the materials and all that added a lot more content to the game. So spending $30 on it, or $20 or whatever it was, was slightly justified. I would have priced it at 20 personally, but whatever.
The pricing is what knocks people off. That's why they keep kind of making that statement. If it was cheaper, then it'd make more sense for what it's doing.
Exactly, right. Case Zero is kind of an interesting thing, because that was, what was it, like $5, wasn't it, when it came out on Xbox?
About that.
Yeah, it was like a really cheap price. So that was easier for you to kind of like impulse buy. Like, oh man, $5. Yeah, I'll buy that. And it's a nice little preview for the game. And it really gave you a nice slice of what it was going to be. So, that's a good example of the difference between that. Like, Ground Zeroes just felt more like a full game. It even had like the credits and the ending, and just, I don't know, it felt more like an MGS title, just on a bit of a smaller scale, while still feeling, justifiable for its budget price. I don't necessarily think standalone games have to be $5 small scale experiences, like almost like a paid demo, but with more content in it to justify the price. I don't really think they have to be like that all the time. The whole point of a standalone title to me is, here's something that stands on its own, hence the title, but has enough content and enough of an experience that we could budget price it, but you don't have to have, the other title towed to it to like fully have the experience. DLC to me is like, here's something that we really want to release that's very much connected to the main story. But we're reusing a lot of the assets, so you need the base game. And on top of that, but hey, it's going to be cheaper than a standalone title. So here you go. Like, that's how it always should be for me. DLC has to be cheaper than standalone title. Standalone title can be more, but it depends on what you're getting in it. You get what I'm saying? Like, Case Zero was perfect for what it was. So $5 for that small experience, perfect. But then Ground Zeroes, $30 for that like much more richer experience. Oh fuck yeah, I'm so down with it. That's kind of like what I view it as.
Yeah, I mean, another good example is a standalone game is PT.
Oh, PT. Adnan, why'd you have to bring
PT
that up?
PT is like an enigma for what it actually is, but I would class it as a standalone game.
Dude, we need to,
because it technically is a standalone game right now.
We need to make a remake of E.T. and call it PT, and it's about us letting go of PT. Just like Elliot had to let go of E.T. I'm telling you, it'd be beautiful and gruesome.
Oh god, like it'd be
It can be done. I think we might need someone else far more. We might need Spielberg himself to direct it, but I think we could do it.
Chris Pratt starring in it as well. As E.T.
As grown-up Elliot. PT, come back! We'll get Marissa Tomei to be Lisa, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, PT is like my kind of last point I'm going to touch on kind of standalone. That is just like PT hit the nail on the head on so many different things, and yeah, I think it's a great standalone because it pretty much was standalone from Silent Hills, because even the ending was like this. This doesn't necessarily have to like have a direct correlation with Silent Hills, but I think that is a perfect example of what it is. Whatever you want to call it, tech demo, whatever, it is a standalone game.
Yeah,
and it's the biggest shame that it's no longer available.
It was like a gift from like the gaming gods to us mere gaming mortals, but then they took it away from us. Like they're like, this is too great, because dude, it really was. It was like a full game, man, for nothing. We paid nothing for that. It was amazing.
Yeah, we were like Raiden getting beaten up by all those the revenants in MKX. The worst moment. Chris Cortez in the spoiler cast. The worst moment of his pathetic life.
He will not write about that in his memoirs. He will keep that out. Like, then they captured me and stuff. Nothing else happened. And he will always remember getting kicked. Like, it was like a kid being bullied in high school. It was horrible, man. Oh, Jesus Christ. But it's I'd be curious what our listeners think as well, or even what other people in general. I'd love to talk to other people about the whole, like, what they think defines DLC versus standalone, because really I think it varies from person to person. I think both of us had really interesting viewpoints of what we thought on it, and it really kind of adds to what it is. I have to say, though, I think I'm more supportive of standalone games than DLC, because a lot of the time standalones are, with the exception of Case Zero, are things that are released, like almost as an afterthought. Like, I don't think Kojima ever intended Ground Zeroes to be its own thing. I think at one point he was even considering having a part of Phantom Pain, what it was originally intended to be, the opening. But their standalones are usually afterthoughts, I feel. And I think that just it comes off as more genuine, and you feel, I don't know, it just feels a lot less like dirtier, you know what I mean, than DLC. Because DLC, like the season pass nonsense we keep talking about, just comes off as like, ugh, you know what I mean? Like you feel dirty, like, ugh, I got this season pass. And look, this is not to say anyone who enjoys season passes, I'm not, ribbing on you guys or anything. I mean, I get it. I've bought season passes before. I fucking bought the Last of Us season pass and the BioShock one. So I have done it. I've done it. I kind of want to wash my hands of it. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was. And I just think standalones come out across better to me. You know what I mean? As I get older, it's a financial thing, and so I don't want to like alienate people or anything like that. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Like you guys can get it.
Bang on, son.
But dude, I think we've kind of like we're spent on our stuff here. I think we're kind of done. So
yeah.
I
just want to go to sleep.
But dude,
I'm gonna crash in bed right now.
Yeah, before you go to bed, go ahead and take us home, dude.
But yeah, so thank you for joining us this week for the episode. Be sure to follow the Game Headline Show on Twitter at TGH Show, and be sure to like us on Facebook as well, the Game Headline Show, for up-to-date episodes from Game Headline's official podcast. Me and Chris have been slacking over there, but we're going to get back onto it tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
So don't worry about that. So additionally, the Game Headline Show can be found on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, and of course right here at GameHeadlines.com. Stay tuned for next week, because we'll have more places where you'll be able to find us.
Yes.
And I'll have to update that introduction for Chris because last time I was typing Stitcher when he was reading it out.
That was, dude, we were so in sync at that moment. It was awesome.
Yeah, I was like, oh, damn it. It's like quickly typing, you're reading a sentence. But yeah, we have big news to announce this week. So do like us on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll find out what it is, because we're really, really, really excited. And also a massive shout out to Podbean, because they told Chris and I, mainly Chris, because I didn't get the notification, that the Game Headline Show will be a featured podcast on their homepage next week. So massive shout out to Podbean for that lovely, lovely message that we got this week. And yeah, so you can check us out on the front page of Podbean. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and see you at episode 30.
All right, guys, take care.